Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcast. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championships, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Arnaldo Leon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whoever you are, wherever you live, hopefully you're safe. We are only 2 months. Just think about that right now. We're only 2 months away from ending the year of 2020. Football's back. Basketball is back. Baseball, soccer. Actually, if I go outside right now, it is very likely that at the time of this recording, I am seeing a group of people huddle together, go watch football. It's been happening. My friends still dog on me about that, being like, oh man, you gotta separate yourself from other people, social distancing. Well, at the very least in the Orange County area where I resided up until now, things have been pretty, stable. Things have been pretty similar, the same. Things seem like, the year of 2020 is clearing up. The whole COVID issue, yes, although I do know that the POTUS right now, the President of the United States, he currently has COVID. But, at least where I live right now, the culture, the community, everything seems like it's going back to normal like it used to be. So, wherever you are, hopefully your community is doing well for yourself and that things are going back to normal. You got malls, you got restaurants, you got church gatherings. Everything is going back to normal, and I'm happy about that. I really am. And so for today's podcast, I'll be talking about the recent UFC Fight Night event, which was UFC on ESPN, Holm versus Aldana. And then after talking about the events and all the matches and the aftermath, I'll then be going into the news brief. And let me tell you right now, the news brief has been kind of wonky as of late because Mike Perry is involved. And when Mike Perry's involved, you're going to get something weird and off. And so, let's talk about UFC on ESPN, Holm versus Aldana. I'll be talking about each match. I'll be giving the fight statistics. I'm not going to go into each fight and expand upon them. I'm just going to look into them, and either I'm going to just generally and quickly summarize what happened in the fight, or if they're a big fight like Holm versus Aldana, or you're going to Castro against Felipe, then I'm going to be like, yeah, man, so this is what happened on a per round basis. And so, right now, I'll be talking about Holm versus Aldana, and here are the fight stats. No, first off, Holm won the fight, unanimous decision, easy victory for Holm, great performance there. For Holm's fight stats, she landed 55% of her total strikes, 184 out of 342. She landed 154 out of 301 significant strikes, 51%. And get this, Holm landed 5 of 14 takedowns, 36%. Now then, you're thinking to yourself, 5 of 14, well then, I guess Aldana did a really good job defending takedown. Not really. So let's go into Aldana's stats here. She landed 92 out of 210 total strikes, which is 44%. She landed 69 out of 185 significant strikes, which makes her 37%. Aldana landed 0 takedowns. So I'm going to go by the fight for each round here. I'll look at my notes here, and I'm seeing so I can quickly jog in as well to what exactly happened here. So, the fight starting. So, Aldana, for the most part, throughout all 5 rounds, tries to chase Holm, and she was fighting a good range on her strikes. Holmes pokes her with a good combinations and retreats. Holmes scores a takedown to end the fight, and this pretty much was every single round. Rinse and repeat, 1st through 5th, and it was especially concerning in the 4th round, where it was like, you know what, it's over. Holm has on the bag. Holm is winning this fight. And it's because in the 1st round, ring, bell rings, Aldana just chases Holm. Holm is just circling He just circling. Like, have you ever seen an amateur boxer, and they're like super cocky, and there's literally just running around, like they're running around their opponent, not really doing anything. Or if you're a geek, if you're playing Sonic the Hedgehog in Super Smash Brothers, where you're just running around, poke, running around, hit him with an elbow, running around, kick him, running around. Just Holly Holm did everything she can to annoy, to bother, and to make Irene Aldana as uncomfortable as possible in the striking, which is surprising because Irene Aldana was at one point, many would consider Irene Aldana to be top 3 best strikers in the UFC's bantamweight division. And so Irene Aldana, this grade A, great striker, she just couldn't find her range. And because Holly Holm was constantly backing in, backing out, constantly moving, because in most fights you see, and notice how great Holly Holm is, because there's not a single person, men or female, man or woman, who fought like Holly Holm did on this night. And the reason being was that every single fight you saw was, if you think about a typical MMA fight, you can kind of imagine in your head what's happening in your typical mixed martial arts fight. And the bell rings, 2 fighters, they're poking each other, but they're moving within a vertical plane. They're not sidestepping, they're not moving to the left, they're not moving to the right. They're pretty much, for the most part, moving in a straight vertical plane, and then they have to reset themselves by moving horizontally. But in this fight, Holly Holm moved more horizontal than she did vertical, which meant that, for the most part here, Aldana constantly had to go shuffle her feet left and right, not forward and backward like the large majority of fights have been, and so she just wasn't comfortable. Holly Holm should go dive in, goes in for a quick combination, goes right back out, goes to the left side of Aldana, goes to the right side of Aldana, goes in for a leg kick, goes back, goes in for uppercut, goes back again, goes in for a leg kick, goes back, goes in for a short combination, ending with a body kick. Like, Irene Aldana had nothing going on for Holm. And even though Irene Aldana is a big, big girl, Holly Holm just pretty much took her apart with her striking, poking her at her whim. And now, it's all, first round easily goes to Holly Holm. Second round goes pretty much the same way. Holm gets a takedown 3 minutes in, and Holly Holm, not really necessarily known for her grappling, she's capable of doing so, but she's not really the best at it. Holly Holm, throughout all 5 rounds of action here, was able to successfully get at least 1 takedown per round. She went to, which is surprising to me because I'm looking at this right now, and it says here, so Holly Holm landed 5 of 14 takedowns. She landed 1 takedown per round. I thought she landed more, and the fight stats here are very deceiving. It's making it look like Holly Holm was struggling mightily with the grappling, but honestly, no. 5 of 14, if she wasn't, okay, here's how the fight stats work. If she didn't successfully take Irene Aldana down, because she took her down mostly via clinch work, she didn't do the traditional single or double leg, Irene Aldana would stand right back up, but Holly would go then push forward and attempt another takedown. And I think that's how the fight stats go, because Holly Holm would grab onto the waist of Aldana, push her forward, and then Aldana gets on one knee, stands right there back up, then Holly Holm pushes forward again, Aldana barely gets down, stands back up, and then Holly Holm just pushes her to the ground. So that right there is 1 of 3 takedowns, of 1 of 3 takedowns that she successfully landed. Which I find ridiculous, because the entire time frame, like within the span of 6 seconds, Holly Holm would attempt 3 takedowns. It's ridiculous to me. Ridiculous. She failed 2 times, and then she pushed forward and successfully got it. But it wasn't like, because the fight stats are very deceiving, and that makes it look like that Aldana kept stuffing Holly Holm, when it really wasn't the case. It wasn't. So, third round starts, Holly Holm gets yet another takedown just 2 minutes in. Third round goes for Holly Holm. Fourth round goes for Holly Holm as Aldana continues to struggle. First round, second round, third round, Holly Holm poking Irene Aldana the entire time. Aldana just can't find an opening. She can't. The only moments to which Aldana could have potentially have had an advantage was when she can go time in perfectly when Holly Holm was going to go and hit for a counterpunch, and she herself can go in for a counter hit herself. Because there are moments in this fight that Irene Aldana was able to go clip and have really good shots onto Holly Holm. But the problem, though, is that those moments were brief in the span that, in the sense that in a within the span of 2.5 minutes, Aldana might have landed a handful of shots that probably lasted maybe 7 to 15 seconds of that 2.5 minute span. But Holm, in the other sense, dominated for the majority of the time. So Aldana just never had any confidence or any momentum going any which way in any minutes of this 5-round fight. 4th round goes to Holm. 5th round, Aldana struggles yet again. All 5 rounds, the exact same, with the exception of different timings of when the takedowns happen, but pretty much it's the same. Holm pokes her. Holm comes in with really good strikes, and Aldana, she doesn't know how to deal with Holly Holm's horizontal movement. You see, the way how Holly Holm fought this fight is very similar to how you see a lot of Dominic Cruz fights, because Dominic Cruz fights, when he fights, he's mostly poking you for the most part. Dominic Cruz doesn't knock you out. He just doesn't. All he does is just irritates the heck out of you. He outboxes you, and he just moves around, and he's constantly poking you, and he's making you as uncomfortable as possible. And the way around that was for Henry Cejudo and for Cody Garbrandt. How they got around that was they just had to be a statue. That was their goal. Don't move. Do not move, because if you're moving and you're trying to follow or trying to trace onto the opponent, find like Dominic Cruz, find like Holly Holm, it's not going to work out well, because then you're playing their game at this moment. And so what Henry Cejudo and what Cody Garbrandt did was that they pretty much became really passive. And they just stood their ground and just waited until their opponent became the one who's the aggressor. Because in this fight, it was Aldana constantly chasing Holly Holm, which was the worst thing Aldana could have done in this fight. If Aldana stopped chasing Holly Holm and was like, okay, I'm gonna stop chasing Holm, I'm gonna plant my feet on the floor here, I'm not gonna move, and I'm gonna wait for my opponent to come in, and I'm gonna find a good clean shot. Now, is that really boring? Yes, it's really boring. It is. People make fun of the Yoel Romero versus Israel Adesanya fight. Was that fight boring? Yes. 100% that fight was boring. But you know what? Israel Adesanya, he fought the way he should have fought. He fought perfectly in the fight. He is a counter fighter. And for Aldana, who for the most part is not a counter fighter and likes dictating the pace of the fights, and she isn't even winning in the exchanges when it comes to these fights, then you know what? I don't think their cornerman did a good job. I still remember in the 4th round, you can hear the cornerman being like, okay, you have to be ultra aggressive in this round. And I'm thinking to myself, no! Don't be ultra aggressive. What are you talking about here? Why? I heard the cornerman, keep pushing forward. You gotta go in for the knockout, man. You gotta go press forward. And I'm like, why? Why would you say that? That's not the right advice. The right advice, although I'm not a cornerman, I'm not a professional fighter, I don't own my gym, so I understand that I don't have the best, resume as it pertains to why I should be giving advice. But still, it was not good advice for Aldana in every single round be like, keep pushing forward. No, don't keep pushing forward. Don't. Because Holly Holm knows that it's very likely that she'll get knocked out or lose the fight if it turns to a scrapyard fight, because there were brief moments in this fight that became a really scrappy fight, and those are the instances to which Holly Holm could have lost the fight. And so what does Holly Holm do? What does Holly Holm do? She avoids the scrap fights. And then you hear your cornerman being like, yeah, just keep pushing forward. No. Right advice would be, Aldana, she's obviously counterfighting you right now. You might not like it. Plant your feet on the ground, fight slow, let her chase you. Because at some point, she's going to be very impatient. And there's been moments where she's been impatient, and you're able to land a couple good clean shots. And it became an issue of Aldana, where the more aggressive she was trying to be, the more it backfired on her, because Holly Holm would go and land in some really good clean shots, a really good set of counter punches and combinations. And next thing you know, and from Aldana pressuring Holly Holm to Holly Holm somehow pressuring back on Aldana, then Holly Holm going back to the center of the octagon and allowing Aldana to go pressure back on her. So really, this was Holm's fight from the beginning. Holly Holm dictated the pace of this entire fight. Congratulations for Holly Holm for winning this fight. A really great masterful performance for Holly Holm. And Holly Holm right now, according to her, says she's she's ready for another title fight. But let's see if that's the case. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So let's look at the aftermath here from Aldana versus Holly Holm. So this is coming in right now from BloodyElbow.com, SB Nation, with the headline being Aldana vows to come back stronger than ever following loss to Holly Holm. Women's bantamweight standard Aldana has spoken out about her loss to Holly Holm at UFC Fight Island 4. These being written in by Kristen King. Also, Holly Holm in the main event at UFC Fight Island 4 has set Aldana back just a little bit, but the number 5 ranked women's bantamweight contender is vowing to come back stronger than ever in her next appearance. Aldana, who competed in her first UFC headliner this past weekend, was given the task of dealing with a former champion in a fight that was said to be considered a number one contenders match to see who would challenge the current champion Amanda Nunes next. Aldana would have been a fresh challenger for Nunes, who was already met and defeated Holly Holm previously, but she was unable to get the job done on Saturday nights. Holly Holm dominated Aldana for the better part of 5 rounds, which saw her earn a unanimous decision victory. Aldana, who had her 2-fight win streak snapped, took to social media days after the fight to address her performance and outline her next steps as it relates to career. So this is on Spanish, but it's being translated to English. She goes to say, in English, "Today, things didn't go my way. First of all, I want to apologize to my corner because we had a very specific fight plan that I could not execute," Aldana said in a statement posted on Instagram, translated by MMA Junkie. "I felt that something was wrong with my left foot. It wasn't responding since the beginning of the fight. No excuses. I still know that I faced the best version of Holly, and I congratulated her for winning. I am proud to know that I am competing with the best in the world. This is how this is. This is how sport is. We win, we lose, but as I've always shown, the only thing that's next for me is to train harder, improve, and come back stronger than ever. Thanks to all the people who have shown me their support in good and bad times. Thanks to my sponsors for their incredible support as always. Ready for what's next." Alright then. So, I want to talk. What's the game plan, huh? What was the game plan here? I don't get it. I really want to know what the actual game plan was, because whatever the cornermen were telling you, it was not good, man. It just wasn't. It's hard for me to think about that. It's hard for me to think like, okay, so the game plan, keep pressuring Holly Holm. When it was shown that pressure wasn't working. And that Aldana should have fought a lot more patient, a lot more passive, and she should have been a much more smarter fighter, trying to go pick and choose her shots. That to me was, I believe, that would have been a better strategy than her cornerman saying, "Come on, you just gotta go in there and knock her out." Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So it is coming in by MMAfighter.com that UFC Fight Island 4 produces second highest ratings for featured cards on ESPN in 2020. The UFC Fight Island 4 card, headlined by a bantamweight showdown between former champion Holm and Aldana, ended up as one of the highest rated cards of the year for the promotion's dedicated shows on ESPN. The card, which technically didn't start until 11 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN due to the college football game between Georgia and Auburn running late, ultimately averaged 1.097 million viewers during the course of the broadcast. Overall, the UFC Fight Island 4 card received a .40 rating in the coveted 18 to 49-year-old demographic, which helped the show land at number 4 overall for cable ratings on Saturday according to the Nielsen rating system. The main card was also simulcasted on ESPN Plus, but those ratings figures are not available because ESPN Plus is a subscription-based service. Telling you right now, there are a lot more younger people watching ESPN Plus. I watch a show via ESPN Plus right now, and majority of young people do not watch cable. I remember in college that for some reason in humanities, the humanities teacher would always tell us, "Hey, out of curiosity, who here still has cable?" And honestly, maybe 1 to 3 people say yes. But the response to them saying yes was, okay, the only reason why I still have cable is because my parents. I don't actually watch cable. So I find it very surprising here that they were still number 4 in the 18 to 49-year-old demographic, considering that most of that demographic probably watches via ESPN Plus. ESPN ruled the entire show with the other 3 top-rated broadcast shows of the night, as well as including Georgia vs. Auburn, which landed at number 1 with 4.22 million viewers on average. The viewership from the featured game undoubtedly helped the UFC card, which actually started later than usual in order to accommodate the broadcast schedule for the college football showdown. The end result of the UFC Fight Island 4 included producing the second highest ratings for 2020. 4 dedicated shows airing on ESPN. The top-rated broadcast was the UFC on ESPN 8 card, headlined by Alistair Overeem against Walt Harris, that averaged 1.198 million viewers back in May. So about 100,000 more viewers. The UFC has been enjoying a strong run of ratings on ESPN during 2020 after promotion was the first major sport in the United States to return to action after the start of the coronavirus pandemic. So, bag on the UFC as much as you want. You can question Dana White. You can question how the company operates. There's a lot of controversy going on that Dana White, Colby Covington, and a lot of fighters are supportive of our current president. You can have your own opinions of that, but you have to differentiate between imposing your subjective preference versus the objective reality, and the objective reality right now is the fact that the UFC is doing really well for themselves during, the pandemic time. So what else is going on here in the world? So I'm trying to find Holly Holm's statement for after the fight here, but I'm going to move on to the next one here. We got Jurgen Castro against Carlos Felipe. All right then. Woo! Okay, this will be a really fun one. So first off, before this fight even started, there are so many red flags. Red flags in the sense that what you're going to watch isn't your typical MMA fight, or you're going to watch something here that's really going to stand out for the wrongest reasons. Right, so before the fight even happened, during the week that this card was, it's a couple days before this fight card officially happened, there were articles out there saying, what the heck, why is Jurgen Castro versus Carlos Felipe in the co-main event? Like, who cares about these two fighters? And I agree with you. A large majority of people, even hardcore MMA fans, do not care about Jurgen Castro versus Carlos Felipe. To be perfectly honest with you, they're two professional fighters. They're out there trying their best to go make money. I respect them for doing that. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, this matchup was just not an interesting matchup for me. It wasn't. But then, we go to the promo package, which even turns me off even more. Jurgen Castro versus Carlos Felipe is the prototypical basic hype package. You can imagine every other, think of every MMA package you've ever heard of. And it's Carlos Felipe against Jurgen Castro. It's Jurgen Castro and Felipe in his own language. Jurgen Castro talking. He's like, hey man, I'm going, I can beat him through wrestling. I can beat him on the ground. I can beat him standing up. I can submit him. It's going to be a really good fight. Yeah, I'm going to knock him out in the first round. And I'll go do my best. Yeah, I got hard hands, I got knockout power, and I'm gonna go and beat them. Then you hear the narrative person like, Jurgen De Castro has heavy hands, and then it shows like De Castro scrapping with somebody. But the most funniest one was when the narrator was like, Carlos Felipe, he's got knockout power. Then Felipe, like in his language, is like, yeah, man, I got knockout power. I can beat anyone. But to show that Felipe has knockout power, they just show Felipe throwing in some like left leg kick, and then the referee stopping the fight. Then Felipe like throwing his hands up in the air, being like, yeah. To me, I'm like, what? Like, this guy has hard knockout power. Soft left leg kick. His arm is being raised. Expect action. So immediately, the narrator, the package, the commentary wasn't there. And you know the fight commentary team don't care about this fight. The second is 2 seconds into this fight, Felipe. So Felipe, he comes in and he does that Muay Thai thing. He does the Muay Thai thing where you go and, you know, like you're moving like your leg up as if you're gonna like, you know, the stance where they're putting both arms out, they're lifting their knee up, and it looks like they're checking a kick, but they aren't really even checking a kick in the first place. It's like an imaginary, invisible leg check that they're doing, and so he's doing it. You hear the commentary team like Paul Felder and Michael Bisping, they're just making fun of Felipe. He's like, hey man, look at Felipe here, man. He's a proper Muay Thai fighter here, man. Yeah, he doesn't need fist bumps. He has a stance going on. Yeah, look at him. So Felipe wins first round as he pressures De Castro with leg kicks and body punches. And to be honest with you, this was a very fun fight. Like, Jurgen De Castro and Carlos Felipe fought exactly how I expected these two fighters to fight. Like, I know both of these fighters. And I've seen both of their fights, and I know what to expect from both of these fighters. And so, De Castro starts off very aggressive in the second round, but Felipe fights back with some good strikes. De Castro clinches with Felipe on the cage. Second round goes to Felipe, because for the most part here, it was just Carlos Felipe, man. He was like slowly breaking down De Castro, breaking him down. He's throwing in some leg kicks, throwing in a whole lot of body punches. He's winning all the exchanges. It was pretty evident in the first and second round that Carlos Felipe was beating Jurgen De Castro in his own game, in the stand-up game. And De Castro and Felipe, these guys ain't grappling, these guys ain't wrestling, so it became a striking battle where it was really obvious where one guy was better than the striking. So what does the other guy do? Alright then, third round. Let's talk about the third round of this fight here. If you haven't... Okay, so if you don't care about Jurgen De Castro versus Carlos Felipe, I still recommend everyone to go watch the third round of this fight. Because what happened here, especially Michael Bisping, the commentary team started making fun of Jurgen De Castro, being like, look at him, man. He's tired. He's gassed. Oh, man, I don't know how he's even saying in the first place. Jurgen De Castro, he's putting both of his hands on his hips. He looks tired. Carlos Felipe, his hands are up, being like, yeah. So, the next 5 minutes of this fight was Jurgen De Castro like a zombie or a homeless man just tosses his body, or your drunk friend just tosses his body and like limps at Carlos Felipe. He just throws his entire body there, and he starts throwing out these punches that are just not doing anything, like, at all. And I wrote down my notes here. The ref breaks up clinches really soon, because usually in a clinch battle, like, they let the guy who's doing the clinch work, like, they break up the clinching if there's nothing happening. And Jurgen De Castro, he's actually putting a whole lot of effort in the clinching. Like, if you just see it, you'd be like, oh, well, why is the referee breaking up the clinching here? Jurgen De Castro, man, he's throwing out knees, he's throwing out body punches, he's throwing out head punches, he's trying to go for takedowns here. Yeah, like, I don't get why the referee was breaking the clinches. And I myself didn't like the fact that the referee was breaking up the clinches. The commentary team were happy. They're like, oh my goodness, thank you, ref. We don't want to see a boring fight. Break up the clinches. But I thought it was way too unfair for Jurgen De Castro to be like pushed away for his clinch work. Because here's the thing, Jurgen De Castro didn't have anything else going on in this fight, so he had to go do something. And although the clinching for Jurgen De Castro was hard to watch, did little to no damage at all on Carlos Felipe. Every time Felipe was clinched, Felipe would either look at the camera or he'll look at the commentary team, he'll look at his own cornerman, and be like, what the fudge? He said, what the fudge? He's like, what the fudge, man? Come on, bro. Come on. Oh, man. Hey, referee, man. Break this up. And Felipe starts having a full-blown conversation with the referee. Referee being like, hey, man, don't talk to me, man. You gotta break this up. And Felipe's just there. He's not even attempting to push Jurgen Castro away or to defend himself. He's just getting hit by Jurgen Castro. But these hits by Jurgen Castro were so soft, and he was so tired by then, that Felipe could just stand there, and he can get punched in the face by De Castro, and De Castro will not put a single dent onto Felipe, because he's that exhausted at that point. I'll put down my notes here. De Castro clinched weirdness, because De Castro had I'm not joking, he had 4 or 5 times where he would bum rush Felipe, limps on his body onto the cage, throwing out these weird, weak strikes, and Felipe just looks bored being there, and the commentary team are bored seeing it. They're making fun of De Castro for clinching. Referee is like, hey man, no clinching, because it's really lame. It's just it was so weird. Such a weird fight. Carlos Felipe ended up winning this weird fight, to which he just completely stomped De Castro on the stand-up for first and second round, then got really bored fighting against a very tired Jurgen Castro in the third round. He then goes on to do an interview where he mumbles himself, and he's like, hey, Dana White, performance of the night bonus, right? And you can hear Dan Hardy being like, ha ha ha, yeah, sure. Alright then, next fight coming up. Cringe, man. Absolute cringe. And so you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Come back right after a short break here, covering UFC on ESPN, Holm versus Aldana. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. And so let's talk about UFC Fight Night Holm versus Aldana. So I just talked about the main event and the co-main event, which featured Jurgen Castro versus Carlos Felipe. Let's talk about the fight that I thought was going to be the co-main event, but apparently it wasn't. It was Juliana Pena versus Jermaine Duraname. So I'll be talking about this fight here. Jermaine Duraname was able to go to win the fight via guillotine choke. A really nasty guillotine choke, by the way. In the third round, 3 minutes and 25 seconds in. Let me bring up the fight stats here, because the fight was very close up until the very end here. So, for Jermaine Duraname, yes, she won the fight via submission. Third round, 3 minutes and 25 seconds in. The fight stats say that Jermaine Duraname landed 48% of her total strikes, 57 out of 119. She landed 37 of 91, 41% of her signal strikes, and had 2 submission attempts. The first submission attempt was Jermaine Duraname could have won the fight via Von Flue choke in the end of the second round, but Pena got saved by the bell ringing. So for Juliana Pena, she landed 1 more strike than GDR. Total strike percentage was 46%, 58 out of 125. She landed 27 out of 91, 30%, and she landed 3 of 6 takedowns. So she landed 10 less significant strikes than GDR, but landed 1 plus 1 more total strike, and had 3 takedowns. So, this fight was an incredibly close one here. I'll bring up my notes here. First minute, they're just poking each other for the most part. And then GDR rocks Pena with a counter hit after a minute in. Pena is on the offense while GDR counters. GDR is really good at landing these counter rights, actually. So there are multiple times in the fight here where it looked obvious that Pena, she's not comfortable fighting outside the pocket or diving in there. So she would try to dive in there, and then she'd be hit with these really good hooks. Like these like really good like right overhands and these like hooks and haymakers and stuff. But GDR does get overwhelmed whenever Pena does dive in. So what typically happens here is that Pena, she dives in there, like throwing out like her arms, not really flailing them, but throwing out straight jabs with them. And then GDR would go land like a right hook, would go stun Pena, but Pena would still press forward, which would overwhelm GDR. So GDR, next thing you know, is like has her back on the cage, and Pena is throwing out these like huge haymakers. So between the two, between GDR and Pena, who landed the better strikes? GDR. But in terms of actual striking numbers and statistics and encounters between both of them, it's pretty much dead even. I give the first round to GDR because for the most part here, GDR was doing a slightly better in the grappling here. Pena clinches and gets a takedown by the end of the first round. But even so, even though Pena was able to get a takedown and the striking was really close, I still give the edge to GDR just a little, because she was the one who kept winning in the latter parts of all these exchanges. And then the second round starts, and both women start scrapping as Pena. So Pena, no fear in her eyes, man, just blitz through like a bullet, run straight at GDR. These two are throwing bombs at each other just 7 seconds into the second round. Pena clinches with GDR on the cage. Pena gets a takedown in. GDR getting some good hammer fists from bottom. So there's a really cool moment here where the commentary team and the cornerman, apparently coming from interviews, were talking about how GDR really is making an effort to becoming less of a striker and more of an all-around fighter. It's kind of weird saying, like, when you hear Dan Hardy saying, like, yeah, Jermaine Durandame, she really wants to be an MMA fighter. And I'm like, hasn't she always been an MMA fighter? What is this? Like, are you telling me that she just never trained in grappling up until this moment here? So she's grappling with Pena. Pena is on top, and GDR is doing a really good job, a really impressive job defending herself. There was a moment in this fight here that Pena was on GDR's guard. She brings her chest up, and she tries to go lay down some hammer fist onto GDR, but GDR instead was able to grab on the back of the neck of Pena and starts laying down her own hammer fist. And there was an instance where you could have been saying, hey, GDR, despite the fact she was on the bottom, she was actually winning in the exchanges. And so Pena had to go retaliate, and she had to go she attempted, so she couldn't strike GDR from top position, so she tried to go for a choke then. Pena hammer fist GDR's body. GDR is doing a really good job protecting her head, because for the most part here, like, Pena just couldn't really do necessary ground and pound on the head of Jermaine Durandame. She just couldn't. Pena tries to hook in for a choke from the top, but GDR is able to reverse out and get on top of her, goes in for a side control, and then GDR attempts a Von Flue choke. Possibly Juliana Pena was saved by the bell. I think she was. She was turning a wee bit red, and the way her body position was, it didn't look like she was capable of getting out of the Von Flue choke if the fight were to go on for another 7 to 15 seconds. I think Pena was saved by the bell there. But even though Pena was saved by the bell, and even though GDR was doing good in the latter half of the second round, in my opinion, I go for Juliana Pena. Because for as good as GDR did in the last minutes of the fight here, Pena just did better than her in the striking, in the clinching, and the grappling for 4 out of the 5 minutes. So I give my score for Pena in the second round. And so going to the third round here. Third round, I believe it's tied. The commentary team believe it's tied, where GDR won the first round. Second round went to Pena. And then the third round starts. Juliana Pena throws her hands and lays several head strikes onto GDR. Pena starting to get reckless, which leads to GDR landing some good uppercuts. And Pena being very, very desperate. I think she believes that she's down 2-0. I wouldn't be surprised if she believed that. Because in her own mind, she knows that she didn't do good in the first round. She knows GDR was about to tap her out in the end of the second round. So Pena, absolutely desperate. She's throwing out her hands, laying down some really good head strikes onto GDR, some really good boxing, and then Pena, being overzealous, clinched the GDR, then goes for a single leg takedown. Usually you see like these wrestlers slowly get in for the takedown, and then they try to like tighten their neck, and they move a little bit up to prevent their opponent from going for guillotine chokes. I think I remember Daniel Cormier talking about it, where he says a lot of wrestlers have a tendency of doing things in their regular amateur wrestling game that wouldn't apply for MMA, and especially in their takedowns. If you watch amateur wrestling, there are several moments that in which if they were fighting somebody who was a jiu-jitsu expert or an MMA fighter who has some background in both wrestling and jiu-jitsu, it's very easy to go lay in a guillotine choke on these amateur wrestlers. Like a high-level jiu-jitsu grappler can take on a mid-level grappler. I believe a high-level wrestler is capable of defeating a high-level jiu-jitsu artist. But at this level right now, at GDR's level, I don't think she's that skilled enough to pull this off, but she was able to do so. So Pena goes for a single leg takedown, but she does a thing that amateur wrestlers do, where they don't tuck their neck in, which leads to GDR being able to lock in a guillotine choke from the bottom position. So this is a very scary moment in the end of the fight here, where it was very unsure on if Juliana Pena was doing well for herself, because Pena, she was on top. I think she was at half guard. She was at the half guard position on top of GDR. And you see GDR, she's cranking the neck of Pena. But it's still but Pena's limbs were still moving. And there was a scary moment where Pena's left leg just went limp. And then 2 seconds passed by. And the referee goes over to the side, raises the right arm of Juliana Pena. Arm stays back down. And then it turns out Juliana Pena, she didn't tap out. She was out cold, and the referee ends the fight right there. Jermaine Naranime wins the fight via submission, a very scary submission hold. But man, huge respect for Pena, man. Huge respect for her for not even tapping out, man. She would rather be knocked out cold and be unable to breathe instead of just wow, It was a very impressive performance by Pena. And here's the interesting part. The fight between Pena and GDR, according to the betting odds, was a lot more sparse and less close in the middle compared to Holly Holm and Irene Aldana. Now, we now know, with hindsight in mind, that Aldana vs. Holly Holm was a very one-sided fight. It was expected that GDR would dominate Pena, but that didn't really happen then. And so Pena, really good showcase there. And I got an article here written by MMA Junkie, written in specifically by Mike Bone, with the article saying, the main headliner saying, Juliana Pena released a statement after UFC on ESPN 16 loss, I will hold my head up high. So Pena will not be deterred following a crushing loss to Jermaine Naranime on Saturday at UFC on ESPN 16. And she goes onto her Instagram, and she says, you win some, you learn some, wasn't my night. Massive congratulations to @IronLadyMMA, which is GDR's Instagram name. It was an honor to compete against you, and thank you for your service of upholding the thin blue line. Thank you, Dana White, and at UFC for the experience in Abu Dhabi. I can't wait to get back to this little love of mine. I've missed her so much, and she shows a picture of her daughter, which is really cute. She says, I've missed her so much. Your kids don't always follow your advice. A lot of times they follow you by example. I'm uninjured and don't want to take too much time off. I want to show my daughter that just because things didn't go my way doesn't mean I quit or give up on my goals. This is a game of inches, and I will hold my head up high and move on to the next challenge. Thank you to everyone who has supported me in my fight journey, and sorry I didn't walk away with the win. And to those of you just tuning in, get your popcorn ready because I'll be back soon. And so there was a lot on stake for the UFC bantamweight division on this night. We have Pena, Irene Aldana, Holly Holm, GDR. It makes perfect sense as to consider why GDR or Holm should go fight against Amanda Nunes. But Amanda Nunes should be fighting against Megan Anderson, and I still believe that Megan Anderson versus Amanda Nunes fight might be the very last women's featherweight title bout. It might be if Megan Anderson doesn't win, because I see right now that the featherweight belt, it gets pushed away, and I think the UFC would be in a lot more better place if we had a women's adamant division. That's just me. And so Jermaine Naranime and Holly Holm, they have to wait in line. They have to wait for Megan Anderson and Amanda Nunes. What I think right now is right, because with how Amanda Nunes fights goes, if she defeats Megan Anderson, I can't really expect Nunes to go fight again till middle of 2021. Like, she's going to fight Anderson, and if she beats Anderson, then she's not going to fight till January, March, April, May, June. Around June or July. Which leaves enough room there for possibly being a Germaine de Randamie versus Holly Holm fight. That would be a very fun fight. We can see these two fight at it. And Holly Holm looked impressive as all heck to Iron Aldana. Germaine de Randamie is slowly developing herself to having an all-around game, even though she's mostly known as a kickboxer. So, the current versions of Germaine de Randamie and Holly Holm are very impressive. And it would be great to see a number one contenders fight between GDR and Holm. Now, Holm has said that she wants to go retire soon. She's planning to retire soon. So, if Holly Holm is able to defeat GDR, she'll then fight Amanda Nunes, and depending on what happens in that fight, she'll retire. But I'm also unsure if Holly Holm is going to accept the fight against GDR, and she wants an immediate fight against Nunes right now. Because GDR and Holly Holm, both of them are each other's worst nightmare. Stylistically, I wouldn't be surprised here if the betting odds come out for these two when they fight each other, and the betting odds come in like minus 110, minus 110 also. I think it's going to be an incredibly close fight, and it can really go either way. It can really go either way right now. Both fighters, I believe, are not going to be granted any title fights. I think we're going to see one more fight between GDR and Holly Holm, number one contenders, and the winner of that fight is going to fight Amanda Nunes in the middle of next year of 2021, and the loser of the fight is going to fight Amanda Nunes possibly in the end of 2021. I think, to me, that is what's most fair. In the post-fight presser, Holly Holm does talk about possibly fighting Amanda Nunes next, and she goes and say, you know, I'm going to keep working hard. That's all I'm going to do. I know she's got a lot going on right now, another fight already scheduled, and there's still some other tough girls in there. I mean, I feel the 135-pound division is always pretty stacked, so I don't ever get my sights set on too hard. I just wait until the opportunity comes. The next fight is the next fight, and whatever that'll be, I'm going to put my heart and soul out there, and I'm going to do it again. So that's her talking about the possibly fighting against Amanda Nunes next. So, Holly Holm she's not completely pushing aside the idea that she has maybe one more fight left in her, or she has one more fight left in her she has to go through before she goes on and fight against Amanda Nunes. So these two have fought previously, and we're seeing better versions of them right now than we did before him. I think this next upcoming fight will be a lot more close. And it'll be a lot, because really, GDR just completely outschooled Holly Holm in the first encounter, and it was a shocker and a surprise to many. And so for the rematch here, I can expect a better version of Holly Holm, also a better all-around version of GDR in their next upcoming fight, and it can really go either way. But first, we have to wait for Nunes, what's going on with her. There's no report going on right now of what Nunes thinks or what her opinion is on whether it should be GDR or Holly Holm, because whether or not she defeats Megan Anderson, she has to go fight one of them for the bantamweight title. And so right after a short commercial break here, we will go on to the news brief. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back. I'm discussing UFC on ESPN, Holm versus Aldana. And before I get to the news brief here, let me give a quick summarization of what happened for the two other fights that came up in the card. They're in the lower end. We have Kyler Phillips against Cameron Else, Daquan Townsend against Dusko Todorovic. And I'm telling you right now, even though these fighters are not fighters you know, they're not popular, their salaries aren't even all that well, I'm telling you right now, man, these two fights are fun. Very, very fun. So Kyler Phillips ended up knocking out Cameron Else via KO/TKO in the second round, 44 seconds in. We got Dusko Todorovic defeating against Daquan Townsend in the second round, 3 minutes and 15 seconds in. And both of these fights were proper scrap fights, man. And Kyler Phillips, I'm telling you right now, place all your money in your betting stocks right now on Kyler Phillips. Kyler Phillips, in my opinion, is a prospect that has a very bright future in the sport. And in the bantamweight division right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see absolute classic matches coming up for Phillips. He is a very fun fighter right now, and considering the fact that Sean O'Malley is pretty much in a sabbatical at this point right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Carl Phillips takes up the role as that really fun young prospect coming up in the rankings in a smaller division. I can really see that. But let's go from the world of fighting to Mike Perry, who, although himself is a great fighter, he's kind of a weird one also. This coming in by MMAJunkie.usatoday.com, that the Mike Perry sweepstakes has gone out of control for UFC 255. This is being written in by Farah Hanoun. Mike Perry will have an extra cornerman for his upcoming fight against Robbie Lawler, and it's not a coach. Perry, who had his girlfriend, Latoya Gonzalez, being the only person in his corner in his last fight, which is against Mickey Gall, has opted to have another person join her for his next outing at UFC 255. Platinum Mike Perry took to Twitter to offer fans the chance to pay him to be in his corner, and after a couple of days, we have a winner. Maybe. The fact that he's willing to allow... Okay, so there's no rule, I think, in the sense that fighters can bring anybody to their corner. I mean, the dude just brought his girlfriend, so I guess he can, bring whoever he wants. But apparently the winner is someone named... Here's the Twitter username. Lucky Nuts Poker 1. Let me say that again. The Twitter user, Lucky Nuts Poker 1, might apparently be the highest bidder and heard back from Mike Perry directly concerning that person being the next cornerman along with their girlfriend. So, it says here that it's not just... Okay, so there's a lot of people's names being thrown out there on who can be Mike Perry's cornerman. And one person out there who is trying really hard to either troll him or to actually be his cornerman would be Darren Till. He goes on his Instagram, he says, "I will pay $5,000. Someone tag Perry for me, please, because I'm still blocked, but I'm deadly serious." And then, this coming from Mike Perry, he says, "Baby, we did it. I'll be representing Reddit MMA and cornering Mike Perry when he faces Robbie Lawler at UFC 255. This coming in from Till himself. Till said he would offer $5,000. Darren Till says, I'll go join the cornerman. He says, "How much will someone pay me to throw the towel in?" And then, Mike Perry's manager, Maki Kawa of First Star Management, says there's interest from NFL players. Yeah, on his Twitter, he says, "Hold your horses. I got a few calls from some of my NFL clients to potentially corner him. This is crazy." In a recent interview with MMA Junkie, Perry explained that he doesn't see the use of having coaches give him advice when they're not the ones competing. I will say this right now. There are some really bad cornermen, or there are moments where the cornermen are not doing their actual job. I've seen it happen so many times where cornermen, they're like, "Hey, stick to the strategy," but the strategy ain't working. Like the Irene Aldana fight this past Saturday. I don't get this idea that apparently Irene Aldana was not committed to the game plan, but when Aldana came to her corner, the cornermen were saying, "Hey, Irene, be aggressive, go out there, knock her out, be super aggro." And I'm like, what kind of advice is this? This is the worst advice you can give for her in this scenario against Holly Holm. And there's actually a compilation list of it on YouTube of cornermen giving bad advice. You've seen it happen, especially to Lionheart here, Anthony Smith, where his cornermen, not just Anthony Smith, but other fighters, it's happened, where cornermen force their fighters who are in no shape to compete go back in the octagon and get their butt whooped. So I understand Mike Perry's perspective on the fact that he doesn't want cornermen to be there. Now, obviously, there are some people who want their cornermen to be there, whether it be to give actual legitimate advice or just to be there for support because they're friends. That's one thing. But Mike Perry, he's doing something different. He said he only needs someone to wipe him down and give him water, and that's exactly what his girlfriend did when Perry was able to snap a 2-fight losing skid with a unanimous decision win over Mickey Gall in June. Till has created a GoFundMe page to help his cause. Update, an adult website, has entered the mix with a $10,000 offer. It is being written by Mike Bone via his Twitter. Cam Soda is entering at Platinum Mike Perry's corner sweepstakes with a $10,000 bid per this press release I just received. So Cam Soda goes on to write this email saying, Dear Mr. Mike Perry, I saw you were interested in having someone paid to be in your corner for your upcoming fight against Robbie Lawler at UFC 255 on November 21st. I'd like to formally extend a bid of $10,000 to give a Cam Soda cam model to join you and your girlfriend Latori, who we know was in your corner for your last fight, for your upcoming bouts. What better way to represent the Raw Dog brand than 2 smoke shows coaching you up and rubbing you down in between rounds? By way of background, Cam Soda is an adult entertainment webcam platform. While we are an adult entertainment company at our core, we do have extensive experience in the fight game. In 2018, we announced our foray into MMA world with Cam Soda Legends. This star-studded event was held in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and featured several high-profile bouts, including former UFC heavyweight champion Rico Suave Rodriguez, vs. former UFC veteran Alexis Spartan Nicholson, among others. Most recently, we announced our second ever MMA event, dubbed Fight Circus, and broadcasted it free on Cam Soda from Thailand in August. The event included some crazy bouts, including an unforgettable 2-versus-1 brawl, an intergender grappling match, and more. Because of its immense popularity, we are going to announce a second Fight Circus. Take some time to consider our offer. We love to supply you with beautiful Cam Soda again. Okay. So, this is ridiculous, right? This is absolutely ridiculous. It even says in the bottom here, the blue corner is MMA Junkies blog space. We don't take it overtly serious, and neither should you. Don't come complaining to us when it's... Okay, so, yeah, this really isn't serious news. This is ridiculous. Okay, so let's talk about it. The matchup is Robbie Lawler against Mike Perry. Alright then. This fight doesn't mean anything in the actual rankings. It means nothing. Mike Perry versus Robbie Lawler. Does anyone really expect Mike Perry and Robbie Lawler to be even at all a good fight? Mickey Gall versus Mike Perry. Mickey Gall is an unranked, experienced fighter. Alright then. Robbie Lawler, him and Tyron Woodley have been coasting on their name for a couple of years at this point. And now you got Mike Perry, who most fans don't even know who Mike Perry even is, other than hardcore MMA fans, and we only know him for the guy who's freaking weird. Alright then? So, this news here, is it ridiculous? Is it dumb? Is it stupid? Yes! It's really dumb, and it really is stupid. But that's what's going on right now in the world of MMA. It's a weird, cartoony circus world out there, where we got this one fighter here who... By the way, it's $10,000. By the way, I always bring this up every time I do the podcast, but $10,000, it's not even a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. It really isn't. Okay? So $10,000 can get you a lot of things. I mean, it can help pay for your rent, if you're into that stuff. If you're like, live in an apartment that's kind of cheap or kind of... $10,000 for a professional athlete, man, that's chump change. You know how much money... You know what the downside guarantee is for an NBA player nowadays? I think it's like $750,000. It's like $750,000. It's goofy. And then I'm looking at the comments here. Someone says, "Who would have thought Mike Perry was this smart to make a few extra bucks? Next fight, he's raffling off his unborn child." Okay, so I can't push aside Mike Perry for doing this. Hey, he's making extra money in an industry where you don't really get paid that much, where $10,000 for a professional athlete is considered a lot. So it's understandable right there already. But you know what? I totally forgot he was fighting against Robbie Lawler. And here's the thing. They're fighting at a pay-per-view event. This isn't a UFC Fight Night event. This isn't UFC on ESPN. This is a pay-per-view event where Robbie Lawler, despite getting his butt whooped recently in a one-sided fight, is going to be fighting yet again. The guy got completely marked by Neil Magny. And I love Neil Magny. The dude, here's the thing, Robbie Lawler hasn't won a fight in 3 years. He is 1-5 in the past 4 years of fighting. 1-5. And his fight against Neil Magny was in August. It was just about a month ago. The dude just fought a month ago to Neil Magny, lost decisively. And considering that Neil Magny is a very tactical fighter and Robbie Lawler does his best to preserve himself as much as he can, because he knows there's no way he can go far in his MMA career as of this moment. Yeah, it gets really frustrating. It gets frustrating. You know what gets frustrating? The Mike Perry stuff, I'm not really bothered with, really. I really am not. It is the fact that Robbie Lawler is now fighting his former champion. Robbie Lawler is fighting against this goofball in Mike Perry. And that seeing Robbie Lawler's name reminds me of that dumb UFC card that was booked, where you had Anthony Lionheart Smith, and Robbie Lawler being both the main event and the co-main event, and both fights were super boring to watch. They were uneventful, and the hype packages were based around this idea that they were both fan favorites, which they are. They are fan favorites. They're both fan favorites who are known for having these insane scrapyard fights that was them a couple years ago. But they're not doing that now, are they? They're not. Lionheart Smith, the guy didn't want to compete in the Octagon, and there was controversy going around because he wanted to leave the Octagon and not continue to compete, but his corner were still pushing him. And then we have a guy in ruthless Robbie Lawler who fights so super passive and cares. I will never forget his fight against Colby Covington, which has to be one of the most infuriating performances I've ever seen. And the reason I'm talking about this also was because there was a discussion between Errol Houani and Daniel Cormier, and they're talking about how Tyron Woodley looks like he just doesn't care anymore. Like, his motivation and his drive to be there is just gone at this point. And in the comment section, someone brought up, hey, who would win a fight between Tyron Woodley and Robbie Lawler in the year of 2020? Or, if they do fight again, it'll be 2021. I'll be honest right now, a lot of people might see that. And I would have no clue who'd win. Robbie Lawler versus Tyron Woodley might go down as one of the most disappointing rematches ever. Yeah, I'm just imagining in my head right now, who would win between Woodley and Robbie Lawler? Their current iterations of themselves right now, because Robbie Lawler and Tyron Woodley, man, those two were great fighters. Emphasis on the were. They were great fighters, but both of them are in the same boat right now, where they just don't try all that hard in the octagon. And easily, without a doubt, the version of them just 5 years ago, would absolutely destroy them in the octagon now. I know that for sure. That world champion Woodley and the one who fought against Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler, those versions of Lawler and Woodley would destroy the current versions of Lawler and Woodley. And hopefully, Robbie Lawler is going to retire. Hopefully, he's going to retire soon. I didn't like seeing Diego Sanchez go out in fights. I don't like to see Anthony Lionheart Smith go out in fights. And I don't want to see Robbie Lawler go out there and fight if their heart is not in the fight. So please, Dana White, please help them get to their retirement home, or get ready to go write them off and get ready and get them in a path where they're going to retire soon. Because I don't want to see my favorite fighters be placed in a situation where they come across as just a little bit pathetic. I want to remember these fighters as heroes, not, oh man, look at that washed up fighter over there, man, he doesn't care anymore. I don't want to see that. I just don't. And that brings us to a close for today's podcast. In the next episode of the podcast, I'll be discussing more of what is to expect to come for the next upcoming UFC events and UFC pay-per-views, along with other events happening, including Invicta and Bellator, along with another news brief. And so, till next time, see you guys later. I am Arnel Del Leon. All I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Outcast, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.